Speaking of people who need a safe space, I have to show you this tape. There's a 30-year-old who was evicted from his home in a judicial proceeding. So he's a 30-year-old unemployed man. He's a self-described conservative who was evicted by his parents. So the host of CNN, Brooke Baldwin, had this guy on. This guy's obviously a crazy person. The guy is named Michael Rotonda, and it did not go well for him.
It's my understanding you've lived, at your parents' house, rent-free for 8 years, and I know you do your own laundry, you buy your own food, but they asked you 5 times, please move out. Why couldn't you guys resolve this without the court?
I would consider much of what they were doing to try to get me out as a tax, and what I was
I mean, hey, do you, a lot of us live with our parents, maybe a little bit longer than we wish we could. Please take a sip of your water. I'm sure you're irked. I'm sure your parents are irked, but, you only have one mom and dad. And I understand that you are probably more upset than even you're letting on, but don't you want to reconcile with them?
Okay, let me point out here that Brooke Baldwin obviously is having this guy on just to humiliate him, and this is not great as a television host. You shouldn't have people on simply to make them look stupid. I think that it's kind of a waste of time and a waste of everybody's time. That said, there's another point here to be made. So CNN is spending an awful lot of time with this guy. They spent like 5-10 minutes with this guy talking about how he wanted to stay home and he was entitled. CNN is very much in favor of the idea that if you occupy somebody else's dwelling, you should not be evicted. Okay, they're the ones who are saying that when banks evict people for non-payment of their bills, that this is somehow cruel and terrible. People on the left want to have it both ways. They want to say the millennial generation is entitled when they act precisely how CNN and MSNBC tell them to, which is you should mooch off your parents. We were told that until we were 26, we were staying on our parents' health insurance, and we should mooch off our parents. Our parents owe it to us. We were told that if we decide to live in the home, there's nothing wrong with that. You should stay as long as you want. You should be able to squat. You should be able to live on the street. You should be able to do whatever you want. This guy does it, and suddenly he's being castigated for the doofus that he is. And obviously he is a doofus. But it does go to show you how even the underlying narrative points that CNN is trying to drive home that are successful for them, in many cases are conservative points. It's really funny. When you go and you watch movies from Hollywood, Hollywood, obviously a very, very left area. It's a place where virtually everybody is a Democrat. But if you just watch the movies without knowing the politics of the people behind it, and you could avoid all of the stupid insertions of politics into the particular movies that you are watching, what you would see is actually a very conservative narrative that's drawn out in nearly every movie. It's usually a good guy and a bad guy. There's a concept of good and evil. It's usually somebody who comes into conflict and has to resolve that conflict through a crisis of will and principle. A very conservative idea. Well, the same thing happens on CNN right here. So CNN, if this were a story about the parents evicting their son, right, let's say they'd come at it from the other angle. This is a story about parents trying to get rid of their son. They would have said, look how cruel these parents are. These parents are so cruel, so terrible. But because they decided to take the conservative angle, it's much more compelling TV, which is, why are you suing your parents to stay in their home? Again, it's hilarious to see so many folks on the left who are saying, you should be independent. You should get out of your parents' home. Why are you bothering your parents? And then at the same time, they say, well, you know what? You really should be deeply dependent on the government. Be dependent on the government. Be dependent on everyone else. There's nothing wrong with taking a government check. There's nothing wrong with taking a handout. There's nothing wrong with demanding a handout. Now, they say this guy's a self-described conservative, but he's acting like a Bernie Sanders lefty. It's Bernie Sanders lefties who say that I am here, therefore you owe me stuff. And that's precisely the angle that this guy's taking. And CNN's ripping him for it. So at some point, I'd like them to ask Bernie Sanders what this guy did wrong. I just think it'd be really funny. Like, they could have this guy on with Bernie Sanders, and they could ask Bernie Sanders if the guy is doing something truly awful. Because he's paying his rent, right? I mean, he's doing what he's supposed to do. Presumably Bernie Sanders would stand up for him. But CNN is not standing up for him because even they understand that there is nothing good happening there in terms of the useful. Okay, so before I go any further, I want to talk about President Trump and North Korea because he made a pretty major move on North Korea this morning. First, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at Puppy Spot. So, the best place to find the perfect puppy is puppyspot.com. Now, listen, I am not a dog owner. I'm not a warm and cuddly person. But this I do know. If you are going to get a puppy, then this puppy has to be vetted because I've seen too many cases. My grandmother went to the pound. She picked up a dog. The dog nearly bit her. I mean, it's really like this sort of stuff happens a lot. This is why, if you're trying to find a perfect puppy, you need to go to puppyspot.com. It's a trusted service connecting the nation's top breeders to caring, responsible individuals and families. Okay, Puppy Spot is more than a service. They're actually advocates. Their 200-plus dog-loving team members ensure that only the highest level of licensed breeders enter their exclusive breeder community. Their industry-leading health guarantee means your puppy's vaccinations are up to date and they receive a nose-to-tail health exam from a licensed veterinarian before they're brought safely home to you. There are a lot of puppy owners in the office, and I asked them to check this out because I don't know that much about getting a puppy. I don't. And they looked at it. They said it's not only perfectly legit, it's actually terrific that if you were going to get a puppy, this is the place to do it. So get your new best friend at puppyspot.com/Ben, because for a limited time, all Ben Shapiro listeners actually receive access to the Puppy Spot VIP program. They have discounts on everything you need for your new puppy, from food to walking services. You're really, like, again, I'm only laughing because I'm such not a cuddly person, and this sounds so cuddly that it makes me awkward. Like, it sounds so cuddly and wonderful that it just makes me awkward as a human being. So check it out, puppyspot.com/Ben. You get that special offer. Again, you receive I don't think this is super productive for President Trump. His entire base believes it is wrong to kneel for the national anthem. He's getting them jazzed up, right? And I think that that is a useful political tactic. But in its way, it's no different from what Obama did when he would get people jazzed up about Ferguson to go out and vote for him in a midterm election or in a presidential election in 2012 by sending Joe Biden out to say that Mitt Romney was going to put you all back in chains. I do not like the idea of the President of the United States taking an inherently political issue and instead of being circumspect about the issues that are in play, going straight to the everybody who disagrees with me should be deported stuff. I think it's dumb. I think it's counterproductive. I think it doesn't unify the country and actually has a counterproductive response, because here's the question. For Trump, it's all about the political win. I get it. Okay, he's a politician. It's about the political win. But for the country, what I would like is more Americans to believe that standing for the national anthem is an inherent good, not fewer Americans. The polls show that before President Trump got involved in this particular issue, something like 75%, 80% of Americans thought that it was stupid and wrong to kneel for the national anthem. Now that Trump has gotten himself involved, it's more like 55 or 60%. So it's a win for Trump because a majority of the public still agrees with him. But it is not a win for America if 20% of the public now believes the other way simply because they don't like President Trump. So again, I understand the gut level response of President Trump, which is what he is. It's what he does. I understand why that's popular, but I don't think that it's productive for the country. Now, with all of that said, it was not Trump who politicized the NFL. It was the NFL players who politicized the NFL long before Trump was even involved with this. Okay, they were the ones who decided to kneel for the national anthem. They were the ones who decided to wear socks, as Colin Kaepernick did, with the depiction of cops as pigs. That was their decision to make. Okay, and you can't blame people for responding to that decision. Just as I don't blame protesters for protesting my speeches. Right? They are allowed to protest my speeches. That's fine. I think they're wrong, but that's okay. That's part of the political conversation. Well, this is part of the political conversation, too. Again, I do not think that NFL games are anything like college campuses. I'm not crazy about the idea of the NFL cracking down on players doing this, although I think they should have done so at the beginning. Jonathan Last, I thought, had a good suggestion. The NFL should have just come out and said, listen, our consumers don't want to see what you are doing. Our consumers don't like this. So we're setting rules. End of story. Instead, they turned it into a sort of principled point. And obviously, everyone can see through the principal point. Everyone can see through the so-called principled idea here, because it's not really principled. It's much more about the notion that they are going to crack down on players in order to make sure that their wallets are still stuffed. So I get all of it. Listen, I understand the arguments. I'm just not in love with it. I know a lot of people on the right are very much in love with this today. Oh, it's a big win. I'm not in love with it as much as...